This is 0450 hours GMT on Thursday, 23rd of February 2023. 0450 GMT, UK, Thursday, 23rd of February 2023. And this is an introduction to the KHOODEELAAR campaign, world exclusive series of essays updating on our world exclusive commentary broadcast over the last 4 years on the corrupt, depraved, racist British judiciary. And this one is obviously connected. This commentary is connected with the evidence that has become relevant, come to the fore with the two versions of the dubious, dishonest reasoning given by the tribunal, so-called, in the ruling published officially at 10:00 hours GMT on Wednesday, the 22nd of February 2023. The item that has been allowed to be published gives some of the reasoning, and the item that has not been published, has not been allowed to be published, gives other reasons. Apparently, both reasoning consistent in upholding the illegality, the unconstitutionality, the racist immorality being asserted by the UK state and promoted, peddled, and spread by the likes of Sue Reid. Sue Reid, R-E-I-D, Sue Reid, in today's Daily Mail, and we shall go to the Daily Mail and have a look factually, have a look at what Sue Reid is saying, evidentially. And the Daily Mail today, the main splash on the front page is amnesty row over fast track for asylum seekers. And to the right of the page, they say in a big heading, picture exclusive. Look who is back at the palace, Lady Suzanne. Now this is a victory, this is a triumph for the racists in and around the UK monarchy. This is the same Lady Suzanne who was apparently caught racistly interrogating a charity executive based in Hackney, the charity being mainly about women needing shelter and support, women of African, Caribbean origins. It only happened less than a year ago, I think. Let's see what Lady Suzanne says, and then we'll come back to Sue Reid, because there is a touch of irony in the Daily Mail's presentation of this picture exclusive featuring Lady Suzanne, as if There, the Daily Mail bother about racism and the racist rehabilitations, etc. So she became notorious by saying, "But where are you really from?" This is the question that made her notorious. This was, "But where are you really from?" This is the actual title of a book. "But where are you really from?" On identity, humanhood, and hope. Paperback dated the 17th of September 2020. But this Lady Suzanne question is not connected with the paperback at all. This is connected with
Hello again. It takes very little these days to cause people to feel traumatized and violated. When a black woman at a reception at Buckingham Palace was asked where she was from, that was enough to trigger a terrible emotional crisis and make headlines in national newspapers. An aide at the palace asked where she was from, you see. This is not an unreasonable question, since the name under which the woman is currently going is Ngozi Fulani. She may be seen in the thumbnail to this video. However, it caused a lot of upset and people calling in the press and all the rest of it. In the description of this video, I give a link to a newspaper article about this business. Particular offence was caused when she was asked where her people were from. As British viewers will know, people in this context simply means family, not which nation or country. You know, you say, "Oh, where are your people from?" It just means where are your parents
so
from?
this
Where
is
does
a
family come from?
racist.
But by then, of course, Miss Fulani was so traumatized that she was seemingly no longer capable of rational thought. The great irony here is that this is a woman with a deep identity crisis, and I'm not at all sure that she knows herself where she is from. I give a link to an account which she gave of her own.
So what is happening with the internet and the Google search is that this issue that became highly featured in the so-called media during 2022 is not being given the access by Google that it should do in terms of evidence and facts. But this woman, Lady Suzanne, was kind of described as a member of the staff in the establishment of Diana's elder son, who was traveling across the United States at the time, when he was forced to interrupt his routine and distance himself from the racism of the royal family. He said that the racism has no place in the royal family. This is what he was reported as we access it through the Daily Mail online. This is what he was reported as saying at the time, I think. Prince William makes a surprise appearance at a memorial service in Snattisham for the 1953 flood victims, 70 years after the late Queen visited the aftermath. Now, this is not the actual topical item about Suzanne Hussey, but Suzanne Hussey was the reason why he interrupted his journey through the United States. And we shall go back to that. This is proving this is the one that they keep referring to her, but they don't refer to that actual incident. That is what is happening with the internet. The search is being highly corrupted, the search system. The question here in the Daily Mail online is Lady Suzanne Hussey back in the royal fold? Late Queen's Lady-in-Waiting 83 is seen attending same church service as King Charles and Princess Anne in Sandringham for the first time since Race Rao. And they still don't give the date. They don't give the date of the actual row, they're calling it. Okay. She was William's godmother and one of Queen consort Camilla's closest aides. Okay, it comes after Lady Suzanne met with Miss Fulani in December and offered her sincere apologies for her comments. But still they don't say when that comment was made. That's what I'm trying to reach. Prince Harry late openly expressed his delight at the reconciliation between the two in his ITV interview with Tom Brady. Now there is no reconciliation at all. I'll come to that. Lady Suzanne was embroiled in a race row and later resigned from her position after repeatedly asking Miss Fulani where she was really from during a Buckingham Palace reception. Okay, this is November. Reception in November. So November, December, January, February, 3 calendar months. In ITV's Harry, the interview, Prince Harry backed Lady Suzanne, saying, "I'm very happy for Ngozi Fulani to be invited into the palace to sit down with Lady Suzanne Hussey and to reconcile because Meghan and I love Suzanne Hussey. And I also know what she meant. She never meant any harm at all. But the response from the British press and from people online because of these stories that they wrote was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous, the response. That is Harry, not Williams. So Harry's backing came in contrast to his brother William, whose spokesman condemned the comments made by Lady Suzanne as unacceptable in the wake of the Ferrari. I think on this one, William got it right and Harry got it wrong. And we shall not talk more about this at this stage, except to refer to this bit about um, William causing Suzanne Hussey to step down with immediate effect from her honorary role amid the furious outcry after Miss Fulani's tweeted about her experience at the event. Miss Fulani said she was left feeling violated after Prince William's godmother, who served as the late Queen's right-hand woman for 62 years, interrogated her about where she was from at the palace reception. Despite her, that is, Miss Fulani, making it clear she was British. She had also accused Lady Suzanne of moving her hair in order to look at her name badge and asked her, quote, "What part of Africa are you from?" When she replied that she came from Hackney. Only when the domestic violence campaigner, that is Miss Fulani, well, she's a campaigner against domestic violence, not domestic violence campaigner, said she was of Caribbean descent and African origin, did Lady Hussey stop saying, "I knew we would get there in the end." Miss Fulani, 57, later posted a transcript of the exchange on social media, which led to a furious outcry, leading Lady Suzanne to quit her post. In December, Lady Suzanne met with the activist to express her sincere apologies, which Miss Fulani accepted. The palace said shortly after the meeting, "At this meeting, filled with warmth and understanding, Lady Suzanne offered her sincere apologies for the comments that were made and the distress they caused to Miss Fulani. Lady Suzanne has pledged to deepen her awareness of the sensitivities involved and is grateful for the opportunity to learn more about the issues in this area." Now, this is something that applies so much of the coverage in the mainstream, by the mainstream, as topically we shall be talking about in the next few minutes, the coverage concerning Shamima Begum. Now, let's find the Sky News press preview bit, where the Daily Mail's Sarah Vanity or Sarah Vane appeared on a slot attended by Kevin Maguire. And Sarah Vanity made the points I shall come. Saravain, we'll come to that one, where she can be heard against Shamima Begum. Let's check if we can play that.
Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. So, time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Sarah Vine, both with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So, as ever, let's take a look at the front pages then. The Eye reporting that the Royal College of Nursing has upset other unions with its willingness to directly engage with the government over strike action. The Daily Mirror meets Russian mercenaries fighting on behalf of Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. Amid the current fruit and veg shortage, the Metro speaks to a Lidl customer who claims she was stopped from buying 100 cucumbers at once. The headline, "Seize her salad." The Star suggests that protests could soon start if the shortages continue. They've had their own one, as you can see. Front of the Telegraph carries a warning from BT, the telecoms giant, claiming the Chancellor's planned corporation tax rise is a threat to investment and growth. Financial Times has a report on the tobacco firm Philip Morris's thus far unsuccessful attempts to sell its Russian assets. The Guardian carries an investigation into so-called forever chemicals, which enter the human body due to people's external environment and then fail to break down. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. So let's head straight to our guest then, to Kevin Maguire and Sarah Vine. And certainly a day when the newspapers don't quite agree on the lead story. So let's delve inside then, shall we, Sarah, to the Shamima Begum story. She wants her passport back. The answer today was no again. And the question now is, should she be seen as a child who was trafficked or as someone who's a threat to national security?
Well, she's really a test case, isn't she? I think she's it's quite a complex case because there's no doubt that she was 15 when she went. She did, however, go on her own. It wasn't as though she was sort of bundled into the back of a van and transported. She was groomed in the UK. She is or was a British citizen born here. But the truth is that she, you know, a lot of people feel quite strongly, I mean, I myself included, that what she did was actually atrocious. And the fact that, you know, when she was interviewed a few years ago, she I'm so sorry, the cat is here, she refused to condemn the people who blew up the Manchester Stadium, and that she sort of didn't seem to express any real genuine regret for her actions is problematic. I think that this idea, this attempt to sort of get her back on the basis that she was, groomed and a child, doesn't really hold water. Every single person I've spoken to who's had eyes on the information about what she did does say that you know, she can't come back for very good reasons. So I think it's a very difficult case. And of course, if the government allow her back, then they open the gates to lots of other people in similar situations. So it's a very difficult thing. The problem is she will remain stateless. And that is an issue because she has to go somewhere. She can't live in a refugee camp for the rest of her life.
Yes,
so
I mean,
it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. And a number of issues come out of this. One, that dual citizenship doesn't seem to help anybody, Kevin. The other one is, of course, that the Kurds running this camp in northern Syria want people to go. And thirdly, you know, what is it that the Special Immigration Appeals Commission hearing knows that we don't? The allegations, for example, which people have asked her about, to be fair, that she stitched vests for would-be suicide bombers, carrying a rifle to enforce dress codes and so on, all of this sort of stuff. Are they getting to hear that? Should they explain more to us about the decision behind this, do you think?
I think they should, and we've had briefings from the Home Office painting her out in the way you just described. And in answer to your initial question, is she a child who was trafficked? Yes. Could she be a threat to national security? Possibly. But I think it's a bad day for British justice when somebody who is born in Britain, lived in London, groomed in London, is somehow discarded and just disposed of because she doesn't have dual nationality. She hasn't got Bangladeshi nationality. Her parents may have been from Bangladesh originally, but she'd never been there. She doesn't have a passport. And we've made her stateless and we've dumped her on the world. And other countries are taking back their ISIS fighters. This is not to be a fanboy for Shamima Begum. If she's committed any crime, she should be tried here and held accountable, punished in whatever way. But it's this idea that you can just dump somebody. And as Tim Farron, the former leader of the Liberal Democrats, said, if she was called Sharon from Manchester and she was white, this wouldn't happen. She wouldn't have been treated in this way, which is why I actually hope the appeal succeeds, because I don't think this is British justice. Other countries are taking back their fighters. There's probably about 400 estimated people from the UK who went and joined the Islamic State, which Shamima Begum concedes and admits was a terrorist organisation, who returned. Several dozen of them have been prosecuted. The rest have just returned to society. But she somehow has become a poster girl for everybody who wants to turn on anybody. And I'm not painting her out to be an angel, but if she'd have been groomed in the same way and had gone off to a group in, say, Sunderland, Swansea, or Stirling.
All right, we stop Kevin McGuire there because we continue the broadcast of the KHOODEELAAR channel, television channel. This is the bit that I wanted to play, and I have played that bit, where Sarah Bain says that she did these things, and she's talking about Shamima Begum, of course, and she says that Shamima Begum was asked to comment about the bombing in Manchester, and what Shamima Begum said in response didn't include any expression of regret about the bombing by Shamima Begum. Now, how did Shamima Begum become guilty of an offense, any offense at all, by not making a statement condemning the bombing? I mean, this is surely within the limits of the freedom not to speak on any issue or to speak on any issue. It is something surely that belongs to this right, or the option belongs to the individual. So if Shamima Begum did condemn the bombing, that would be one opinion. If she didn't condemn the bombing, that could be another opinion. But how could that be equated to her being a bomber, or like a bomber, or a terrorist, or a criminal? Has everyone in the United Kingdom expressed an opinion about the atrocities anywhere? And the beginning, the Daily Mail's Sarah Bain says that she did the atrocities. There is no atrocities listed in any of the published rulings at the behest of the UK Home Office against Shamima Begum. Of course, confessing to joining the ISIS, whatever, is only a part of the evidence. We don't know, the public that is, don't know what are the actual chronological events, the timeline of Shamima Begum being identified as a victim of the trafficking, and as a victim of the trafficking in particular by the Canadian spy. To what extent did the UK spying agencies become aware of Shamima Begum being the subject of grooming, and at what time, what date, how long before Shamima Begum and her two friends, both of whom are now reported to have died, Khadija Sultana and Amira Abbasi. How many items of contacts between the groomers and these three girls, these street school girls, had the UK internal security personnel detected, established, identified? At what point did the London Metropolitan Police get involved in tracking Shamima Begum and her two friends, or any number of friends who didn't feature in the group that was reportedly in Syria in February 2015, when for the first time that event was published, and we became aware for the first time this month in 2015, after the mainstream news items featured them. What is the definition of atrocities? Let's look at the definition of atrocities. Remember, this is the introduction to the series of essays that we are doing, examining the evidence of the behavior of the United Kingdom judiciary. Now, of course, by judiciary here, in the context of the topical issue of Shamima Begum, we are referring to the stage above the county court stage, say the high courts, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court, so-called. So let's look at the definition of atrocities from Merriam-Webster. Let's say the Merriam-Webster. What does the Merriam-Webster dictionary define atrocity as being? So the atrocity, or atrocities as plurals, a shockingly bad or atrocious act, object, or situation. That quality or state of being atrocious, we'll go into the details of this. The quality of inspiring intense dread or dismay. So, what is the quality of a shockingly bad or atrocious act, object, or situation? What constitutes atrocious if somebody refuses to condemn an act, whether it's a criminal act, violent act, or otherwise a positive act? What is the effect on society of somebody staying silent about an event? Which is what happened, according to this recollection by Sarah Vanity, that when she was asked about the Manchester bombing, Shamima Begum refused to express regret. Now, you cannot express regret. That is a first person thing. What is a regret? Let's say regret. What is the definition, the meaning of regret? To mourn the loss or death of something or somebody, to miss very much, to be very sorry for. Now, these are things to do with somebody being quite close to something they are mourning, the loss or the death of, to miss something. Now, why should that be equated to her having committed an atrocity? She didn't regret, number one. Number two, we only know that Shamima Begum was asked the question about the Manchester bombing at a reported alleged interview which took place beyond our knowledge, our witnessing. We only know what the interviewer reportedly has been allowed to publish. And who was the interviewer? Let's check who it was. Remember, we're talking about the reaction, the actual propaganda massaging in support of Shamima Begum being denied her citizenship, British citizenship, she is entitled to by the fact of her birth in Britain. That's what we are talking about at this stage. So she's listed as having been born on the 25th of August 1999. And in February 2019, so this is February, it seems that the month of February is recurring in relation to Shamima Begum in the context of her having left the United Kingdom for Syria, as reports suggest. Remember, this program, the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, and I, Muhammad Haque, the organizer of the campaign, we have had no contact with Shamima Begum, either with her family or with her herself. We never knew about the existence of Shamima Begum until shortly after she and the two other girls featured for the first time in the mainstream news in February 2015. And in the period since that date or that event, we have been broadcasting and publishing and commenting publicly about two things. One is that the role of the local council, which is Tower Hamlets, the role is described as the safeguarding children duty, or the safeguarding the children duties, whatever the plural singular. And our concern has been and remains and will remain, if any number of children, including those three, or like those three, were allowed to be groomed, brainwashed, and the fact of that allowing taking place with the local council failing or neglecting or refusing to play its discharge, perform its legally obliged duties to safeguard children. If that happens, then the impact on other children, any number of other children, is quite clear, that any number of other children can be exposed to the grooming, to the brainwashing. Now, we also need to separate the other things. This is an essay length commentary, so it will be more detailed than anything we have previously broadcast or published about Shamima Begum and her two friends. There are two things. One is that the duty of the council is absent and has been absent, and I shall substantiate that immediately. And the other thing is that the duty, generally, the duty to safeguard children like Shamima Begum, like Amira Abbasi, like Khadija Sultana, and the other one, the fourth one, that left the United Kingdom separately from these three, Sharmina Begum, not Shamima, but Sharmina Begum. The duty is to protect these children from bad things, and terrorism, so-called radicalization, is or are among bad things by universal opinion. Majority of the people in the world would accept that terrorism of any kind is a bad thing. Now, we're not going into justification by those who will be in the minority by definition. So the duty to protect these children, as owed by non-governmental, non-publicly elected bodies, like the voluntary groups made up of individuals in the community. Individuals in the community who do not necessarily carry or possess on the record British or Bangladeshi citizenship, but are generally descended from the Bangladeshi community, Bangladeshi background. So that is the point that we are making here. One is that the duty owed or the duties owed to these children by the elected local council, the Hrs Council, and the duties owed not by law but by morality, by ethics, by ethnic background and affiliation, by connection with the faith that they perceived to belong to and share, which is called the, let's say, UK based Bangladeshi origin community. Why Bangladeshi origin? Because most of the adults in the United Kingdom who originated from Bangladesh or are from the Bangladeshi origins are not necessarily carriers of Bangladeshi citizenship, but many of them are naturalized British citizens and others are British by birth citizens themselves. Despite the difference in the origins of their citizenship and status, they belong to what is called the Bangladeshi community. And by that definition, I would say it is common expectation, moral duty of those who claim to be Bangladeshis and claim to be concerned members of the Bangladeshi community to have expressed an opinion as to how a child or three children became exposed to, let's call this a most risky event, an exercise, venture, project, journey, trip, diversion that took them to a place that is universally describable as war zone. I mean, it is common sense to think and expect that rational people would want to avoid being in a war zone. It's like rational people would want to avoid being in a zone that is prone to earthquakes, say in Syria, in Turkey. If it is possible, or if it were possible for people to know that an earthquake was imminent in or near the area they are sitting in or are present at the time they hear about this, the propensity, the impulse, the reflex would be to expect them to leave as fast as possible, to stay alive, to stay safe. That would be the propensity about not just Syria or the ISIS occupied, controlled parts of Syria, but of the war-torn parts of Ukraine today, these days. So what is it that could justify the silence on the part of the Hrs Council about Shamima Begum, Khadija Sultana, Amira Abbasi, and Sharmina Begum? And what is it that is driving the silence of the Bangladeshis in the UK, regardless of any party political affiliations they may or may not have with any organization based in Bangladesh or based in the United Kingdom? What is it that is driving their silence? That's a contradictory kind of question, isn't it? Driving. Silence is not driven. Silence is actually the absence of any activity. It's the absence of timidity, absence of kind of it's a kind of ram. It's a kind of silence is itself a lack of activity, lack of life, if you like, life in the action. So why are they silent about the various stages of danger that these girls have been exposed to? And if we take the style of speech of Sarah Vanity as broadcast by Sky News in the press preview edition broadcast on Wednesday, 22nd of February 2023. Let's see what she said. So the Sky News transcript, it is unedited transcript, so let's see that. It's the stadium bombing that happened in Manchester, and that she, that is Shamima Begum, sort of didn't seem to express any real, genuine regret for her actions is problematic. Now, what the fuck are Shamima Begum's actions supposed to be about? The stadium bombing? What fucking actions? Shamima Begum wasn't in the fucking place at all. She was somewhere else. And what problems are there? And then she goes on, this Sarah Vanity. I think that this attempt to sort of get her back on the basis that she was, groomed, and the child doesn't really hold water. Why not? Why not? Because she was groomed. And if she was groomed, then she wasn't responsible for her being groomed, was she? By definition, being groomed is an involuntary action, an imposition, an infliction. In fact, a targeted attack on her that took away any will, any freedom, any option that she might otherwise have for actions. So when Sarah Vanity says that this actions is problematic, she didn't seem to express any real, genuine regret for her actions is problematic. As far as the Manchester bombing is concerned, she didn't do any action. Now, the Sky News press preview edition featuring Sarah Vanity was hosted or presented by Anna Botting. Now, as we have said before, not on this occasion only, Anna Botting doesn't come in with the corrections. She doesn't bring in the objective, factual intervention so that the viewer, being subjected to this stupid statement by the likes of Sarah Vanity, is given misinformation. What does Ofcom regulation say? And in any case, whatever the Ofcom regulation says doesn't really mean anything, because the Ofcom is a joke. Ofcom is not a regulator that actually does do the regulating. So we move on to the next part of the transcript, which contains Sarah Vanity saying, every single person I have spoken to who has had eyes on the information about what she did does say that she can't come back for very good reasons. What are the reasons? Forget about good reasons. What are the reasons? She didn't say the reasons. And Anna Botting didn't say that she should list the reasons, because it's not one reason. There are more than one reason. So Sarah Benetti says, I think it's a very difficult case. How the fuck? There is no case. And as Kevin McGuire said in his answer, that if her name wasn't Shamima Begum, but she was called Sharon from Manchester, and she was white, she would not have been deprived of her citizenship by birth, and she would have been already home. This is Kevin McGuire reporting what Tim Farron, who was the leader of the Liberal Democrats in the UK, has said about Shamima Begum and her treatment by the UK state. Now, quite apart from that and separate from that commentary by Sarah Benetti, during the hours after the formal publication of the version that was allowed to be published of the ruling by the so-called commission, immigration commission, and I shall come to the word immigration shortly after this, stupid Javid tweeted that the ruling by the commission only reinforced his confidence that he was right. He was doing the right thing by taking away Shamima Begum's citizenship by birth when he was Home Secretary. Notice that there was no one from the Labour Party or any other frontbencher or any backbencher in the United Kingdom House of Commons, which is the elected part of the British Parliament, making any comment so quickly. If in the hours that have passed since then I shall catch up with those. But stupid Javid was the first one, as far as I could notice, that was obviously excited in the decision he made to post that tweet. Let's see what he actually tweeted. Quite a lot in relation to his removing Shamima Begum's citizenship. And we're looking for the tweet that he has posted, the latest one, which is and his Twitter handle has got his picture his picture is a grinning one, and it says he's a member of parliament for, or he is the member of parliament for Bromsgrove. And he joined Twitter in 2009, and he has got 11,800 tweets. Right. So this is the one that his tweet was 18 hours ago. I welcome today's court ruling, which has again upheld my decision to remove an individual's citizenship on national security grounds. This is a complex case, but Home Secretaries should have the power to prevent anyone entering our country who is assessed to pose a threat to it. Now, this fucking cunt is completely subliterate the shit. She is not entering, you fucking cunt. She is a British by birth who is being prevented from returning home. Now, of course, his subliteracy and his disregard for morality and ethics and law is a quality for the conservatives or for the racists who endorse him and others like him, mental slaves, to be exhibits, items of diversity, which is other expression for discrimination and imposing adversity on people subjected to racism and discrimination. Now, who is assessing Shamima Begum to pose the threat? What is the criteria? Of course, if it is a free country, if it is a country democratic with transparent kind of criteria, then what are the threats? And who is assessing? It doesn't matter who the assessor is. The point is, this girl is being denied her rights at every stage by the state that is supposed to have protected her. The local council, townless council, allowed her to be groomed and brainwashed and radicalized, so-called. And then the office of the state, the Department for the Interior, where stupid Javid was incumbent at the time, he failed to even identify who she was. He is denying, even in this tweet he posted on the 22nd of February 2023, he is denying something that is absolutely undeniable. The fact that she has been born British. But he is saying that she is trying to enter. She is not trying to enter, she is trying to return. Return and enter are not mutually usable as mutually kind of similar words. These are two contradictory positions, actions. So if Sajid Javid can misinterpret enter and return and use return where he should actually use enter, and use enter where he should use return, then what is the possibility that in the actual details of the contents of the so-called assessment or in the contents of the so-called assessments, he didn't make similar fundamental errors by confusing two conflicting contradictory things, or more than two conflicting contradictory things, because there is no public access to any of these assessments. Now, going back to the basic fundamental rights that Shamima Begum has been and continues to be denied and deprived of by the state, who exposed this child and who exposed the other children to this danger, or to this series of dangers and denials, deprivations? We shall go back to Sue Reed. Remember Sue Reed in the Daily Mail of today, that is Thursday of February 23. Sajid Javid and Sarah Vanity, all of them saying the same thing. What is the same thing? Because they are insinuating. They are not substantiating. They are insinuating. By definition, it's prejudice. It's not prejudice, as T. has said, as related on Sky News press preview by Kevin McGuire, that if Shamima Begum's name was from Manchester, not Shamima Begum, and she was white, then none of these denials and deprivations would have happened, would have been inflicted on her. But comes up back. This program, KHOODEELAAR television channel, has been broadcasting since 2021, in the middle of, August, let's say 2021, August, September, under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions, effectively. Why? Because Baby Angel Geronimo has been the most reliable, authentic witness, witnessing the depravity, the backwardness, the corruption, the prejudice, the insinuation that we can refer to as being present in all the comments, the majority of the comments that have been published so far in the last, let's say, 20 hours, in support of the robbery of Shamima Begum's British by birth citizenship. And Baby Angel Geronimo, therefore, is the most comprehensive witness to all these recurring, taking place every single 24 hours. We just refer contextually about the behavior of the state. The police is part of the state. In fact, the police is the physical expression of the state. And the admission by the Rupert Murdoch's Sun newspaper on 22nd of February 2023 on its front page, that the same Lancashire police that is severely condemnable for all the things that went wrong in their contacts with and comments about Nicola Bulley, had also let down another woman in the same area. And that woman committed suicide, and her brother has spoken to the Sun and has been reported in the Sun on the front page and also in the inside pages. So the police, when they became involved in so-called monitoring of whatever grooming was taking place of Shamima Begum and her friends. According to the lawyer that was the lawyer for Shamima Begum, or in the case involving Shamima Begum, called Tasneem Akunji, the police didn't tell Shamima Begum's family, parents, what the police knew about the state of Shamima Begum's being brainwashed, groomed, and being the subject of radicalization. Now, the school is called Bethnal Green Academy. That is not the name of the school. One of the things that the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council, as the local education authority, since the abolition of the Inner London Education Authority, has done in its kind of career, in its time as the local education authority, is to mess up the direction of the education program or the schooling program in the schools within its borders, boundaries in the borough. The school that Shamima Begum actually attended had been called Dainford School, the Dainford School for Boys. Now, Shamima Begum is shown as having been born in 1999, so it was about 5 or 6 years before Shamima Begum was biologically born that I was involved in protecting the name of the school, Dainford School, and the structure of the school. That school was called Dainford School for Boys. To retain the school's structure and the composition as the single-sex boys-only school. I nearly succeeded, but a number of Bangladeshis, adults, including a teacher or two in the school at the time, Dainford School, lied to parents. So they made the difference by lying to the number of signatures that were needed to the petition defending the school's structure. If those liars hadn't lied, then the school would still be called Dainford Boys School. And the school would be Dainford Boys School, and Shamima Begum and her friends would have gone to a girls' school or to another school. The only 2 girls' schools that I know exist in the secondary sector are the Mulberry School and the Milan-based school for girls. Now, what would be the qualitative effect if the school were allowed to remain a boys-only school, single-sex school? First of all, the culture in a boys-only school would have been very different from the culture that emerges in a mixed-sex secondary school, which happened in the case of the Dainford School being merged into and converted into a boys and girls mixed-sex school. When this happened, because of the lies by the liars in the Bangladeshi community and in the school, we didn't have a direct, continuous contact with the school after that event, that say middle 1990s. That's about 5 years before Shamima Begum was born. If we had the contact, what would have happened as one of the results of the contacts would have been to keep an eye on the quality of the management of the school, the quality of the discipline, the quality of the curriculum, the contents, etc., etc. Because not being a parent myself, my involvement with the school was in direct response to the invitation that I had been in receipt of from parents whose children, boys, were at the school, and they were concerned that the school was going to change its character. And they approached me because I am the campaigner. Now, it is obviously not possible to factually say anything after that because I was not there and the school changed. So we don't know what would have factually happened. But one thing that definitely would not have happened would have been the presence of these girls few years later when they came to the school, when they were school going, like, in the new century, not in the 1990s, because they were only born 1999, so she was only 1 year old during the last century. And whenever the age was when she went to the school that formerly had been called the Danforth School, the school had fundamentally changed and got worse in terms of management, in terms of the care for the children. So the police didn't feel any obligation to involve the parents of these girls in knowing about what they were doing. And the police obviously totally underrated the parents' role. They didn't think that the parents were entitled to know the information, let alone have the ability to stop the grooming. Of course, that's a complicated area because the groomers are not identified, so nobody knows where they came from, where they operated from. So nobody can actually geographically identify them. But one thing is certain: if the school authority, the headmaster, and the governors of the school, as it became after its name and structure being changed from single sex Danforth School into Bethnal Green Academy, if the governors and the police and the local council were and respect the parents and the family and treat these children as being absolutely in the highest category of children deserving support and protection. If they did that, then been an atmospheric deterrence to radicalization, environmental deterrence to radicalization. But there was no mention. There was no hint. There was no hint, there was no mention, let alone any discussion about the fact of radicalization happening in that school to the children in that school. Now, any on the website of the Tower Hamlets Council, what is the Tower Hamlets Council doing about these events? So the Tower Hamlets Council on its website, which is towerhamlets.gov.uk, and let's put a narrow search term. The narrow search term is the name, first name Shamima. And what does it say? Okay, I'm reading these search results Shamima is a narrow, that is narrow as defined in the internet search terms. Your search for Shamima returned 0 results. Now this is the result at 06:11 GMT on Thursday, 23rd of February 2023, which is the day after, the calendar day after the publication of the ruling by the immigration. And I'll come to the immigration. Remember, this is the essay length introductory part of the essay length investigation examination of all aspects of the Shamima Begum brainwashing, radicalization, and her deprivation, being deprived of her British by birth citizenship at the behest, at the initiative of the mental slave Sajid Javid, who was in post as the interior minister for the state of the United Kingdom at the time when he removed her British by birth citizenship. So this essay length series of investigative world exclusive reports by the KHOODEELAAR campaign would continue beyond one edition or one day. Now, let's go to one of the people that regularly appears, currently called KC, that is King's Counsel, used to be called Queen's Counsel, QC, now is KC. One of the ones who is a licensed law trader called James E.D., E-A-D-I-E. Now, James E.D. appears as a what they call government lawyer. And he appeared at various events during the progress or movement of the Crossrail project during the first 10 years of the decade, when the KHOODEELAAR campaign opposed the project's plot to dig a hole in the middle of Brick Lane. That is how the KHOODEELAAR campaign began its action. And defeated the government because they withdrew the plot. And James E.D. was one of the government's representatives in the presentation of the evidence in support of the Crossrail plot in the committee stages. It was called Crossrail Bill. Initially, it was called the Hybrid Bill, and then it became a Crossrail Bill. At both stages and at both sets of perpetration of the lies, ED was the liar. The perpetrator presented the lies for the government. Now, ED, of course, was the main liar for the Home Office against Shamima Begum. So we are showing the connection that ED is a notorious retail lies. He gets paid huge sums of money, public money, to tell lies. He's a licensed law trading liar. Now, when when Sarah Bennett said in her Sky News press preview that Shamima Begum did the atrocities, what any truthful legal interrogator, examiner of such an absurd, absolute stupid utterance would do is to ask what atrocities. But Anna Botting, presenting the Sky News press preview, is not known as an interrogator of that caliber or any caliber really. And the nearest rebuttal to Sarah Bennett's lies came from a very timid Kevin McGuire, because Kevin McGuire, being from the Daily Mirror, is not a comparable kind of proponent of the case that he's supposed to be presenting. What do I mean by the case? Because Fleet Street, the British main newspapers associated collectively with the Fleet Street of shame, Fleet Street, mainly racist, right-wing, reactionary, and to use an American political phrase, McCarthyite. They invent things, the lie, and the lie most frequently against truth and justice and democracy, against transparency, against accountability, against objectivity, against legality, against constitutionality. Kevin McGuire is not a match to the other side, because the other side is like, on a scale of 1 to 100, the other side would be weighing about 90%, and Kevin McGuire would be weighing about 8%, and the 2% shared by others. So Kevin McGuire just about managed to say what he did say about Tim Farron. Tim Farron saying that if Shamima Begum's name was Sharon from Manchester, she would not have been denied and she would not have been treated in that way. That is what Tim Farron has actually said. Let's see if we can find Tim Farron. So Tim Farron has got quite a bit of Twitter posts. He has got 84,900 tweets. And he joined again in the same year, 2009. And he says that he's proud to be the MP for Westmoreland and Lonsdale, and he's former leader of the Lib Dems. And he's based in a place called Kendal. And he's following 13,500 people, and he's being followed by more than that, 291,000. So let's go to Tim Farron's particular. Right. And he appeared on the News Agents, and it was fronted by Emily Matlies. Now, I'm not going to go into Emily Matlies in this particular edition, but we shall be doing that later. And he's quoted here on the tweet. If she was white and called Sharon from Manchester, it wouldn't even occur to the government to take the passports of somebody's obviously British. That is what he said, and he's on this clip that I'm not playing the sound of. So we shall be putting that particular item and adding that to the KHOODEELAAR posts. So we are putting this to it at 6:23 GMT or 6:23 GMT. There is a spelling error, so we're correcting the spelling error and then retweeting it. Remember what we are talking about. We are talking about the latest judicial corruption of the idea of justice. Now, the comments made by Kevin McGuire said that what has happened to against Shamima Begum by the British state was not British justice. It was a bad day for British justice, said Kevin McGuire. Well, of course, it was a bad day for justice. There is no such thing as British justice for a start. And we shall come to that in due course when we update. And this is the part that we are posting again because there is a spelling error. There are two spelling errors pointed out. And robbery. We'll talk about Black Lives Matter as a parallel kind of comparison, but only to illustrate the point about mental slavery by the likes of Sajid, Stupid Jabid, and Sadiq Khan, for example, Suella Braverman, Ugly Patel, and Rishi Sunak in the context of the corruption of the office of Prime Minister that Sunak is now kind of engaged in discrediting, disgracing by joining the agenda against the migrants. Now, as we said, there is no entry on the Tower Hamlets Council's website of the name Shamima, nor is there an entry on Shamima Begum. Now, we have said in the previous post that Lutfur Rahman is a proven crook, and so therefore he is not expected to be bothered by any evidence of corruption and bad doing, bad work by the council. He fronts. There are two forms, there are two words. One is front, which is a noun, which is a verb, and the other is affront. Front is being ahead or being at the front of, and affront, I'll get the Merriam-Webster people to give me the definition. The Merriam-Webster said affront. What is the affront? Affront, to insult, especially to the face by behavior or language, to cause offense to face in defiance of. Now, I have published on the facts, and I never publish anything other than the facts. The particular factual event that happened in October 2010 involving a man called David Cohen, who is still with the London Evening No Standards Standard. Now, No Standards Standard is our general description of the Evening Standard. That doesn't mean that every single item we refer to or cite from the Evening Standard is lacking in standards. But essentially, the Standard lacks in standards. Now, this is the front page of the Standard newspaper. If it is possible to bring to the camera, this one, this is the only way it can be brought near the camera. This is the heading on Wednesday, the 22nd of February 2023, the Evening Standard, saying that Shamima Begum loses bid for UK return. That is the correct word, return. Now, David Cohen, he's now the, apparently, according to their website, the investigations editor of the Evening Standard. So therefore, the Evening No Standard had David Cohen as a staff writer even in 2010, which is 13 calendar years ago. And it was during the hustings, I think the last hustings about the so-called mayoral election that took place either 2 weeks or 10 days after that event. Now, the event I'm referring to took place at the meeting room of the Business Development Center, abbreviated to BDC, situated at 7 to 15 Greater X Street. which is only about maybe 100 yards on the other side from the London Muslim Centre, the East London Mosque in Whitechapel Road. Now, that meeting took place at the BDC to apparently assess the suitability of the candidates for the post of mayor at the expense of Tower Hamlets. And I stood with my camera right behind the candidates in order to be able to take the picture of the people present as the audience and facing the candidates. So I stood like inches away from Lutfur Rahman and the other two candidates. There was a fourth vacancy which was left vacant at the meeting because the fourth candidate would have been Abbas Uddin Elias Halal, who was the Labour Party's candidate. So Lutfur Rahman was there independent, and the Conservative candidate was there, and the Lib Dem candidate was there. And David Cohen sat right opposite me, let's say, and right behind Kay Jordan, whose picture I took on that day. And one of those pictures is as a part of the, what is called the Kay Jordan masthead to one of the KHOODEELAAR online accounts and platforms that I use. And David Cohen asked Lutfur Rahman the question, which was the question concerning the controversy between Lutfur Rahman and Abbas Uddin Elias Halal, concerning the publication in an ethnicity-linked outlet called London Bangla of two items about the same allegation against Abbas Uddin Elias Halal. The allegation has since been judged as being defamatory. But at that time, it wasn't judged as being defamatory in a court of law because it had just been made a few days or a day or two before the hustings. And the substance of the allegation about and against Abbas Uddin Elias Halal was that he, Abbas Uddin Elias Halal, had physically beaten up his former wife. Clear, isn't it, that allegation? So David Cohen said to Lutfur Rahman, have you either distanced yourself or distance yourself from the people, or criticize the people or your supporters who have made the allegation that Abbas Uddin Elias Halal had beaten up his former wife? Clear question, isn't it? Clear statement, as I recall. Now, what should the answer have been? Logically, cognitively, factually, no, I have not heard that allegation. That would have been a clever one, wouldn't have been? Because that would show that Lutfur Rahman did not defame or was not engaged in anything like that. So he should have said, no, I have not, because I don't know what you're talking about. Or he would have said, or should have said, of course I have. I have condemned them, and I have distanced myself from them, and I have categorically made that clear that I have nothing to do with that kind of statement or allegation. Right? What else could there be? There could be a total, absolute inability to understand that question. Because instead of saying any of those things, Lutfur Rahman said, I have never beaten up my wife. Now, where was that coming from? David Cohen didn't ask that question. And Lutfur Rahman repeated that kind of denial that he had ever beaten up his own wife. Who was his wife? There was a woman right behind David Cohen sitting there in the room. She spoke, and in her statement, she identified herself as Lutfur Rahman's wife. And she then continued Lutfur Rahman's complete non-answer and stupidity. She said that Lutfur Rahman had never beaten her up. But that was nothing to do with David Cohen's question. So what I have said about that whole thing, I've now described it in more detail than I have done in the previous occasions, as far as I can recall. Evidence that Lutfur Rahman quite literally is intellectually challenged. There is a phrase called cognitively challenged. His ability to recognize facts, contents, is limited. Now, that was not the only occasion. When I presented a single sentence question containing 222 words that I had written in July 2013, at the beginning of the so-called cabinet meeting held on that date, apparently chaired by Lutfur Rahman, when I put that question in writing in advance, clearly Lutfur Rahman had difficulty understanding that question, because obviously it was a longer than average length of a sentence. 222 words length in one single sentence. But then his so-called cabinet member, apparently in the brief called housing, Rabina Khan, also didn't understand that. So when I was taking the chair to put the question, Lutfur Rahman requested me to read it out. And when I finished reading it out, and when I was reading it out, to my left was seated Isabella Freeman. Isabella Freeman, the monitoring officer, who had been forced to resign from Slav Bara Council because of her lying and her racism. And then she was appointed to the Council as their head of the legal department. So I read that out, like I'm speaking here, but I'm not speaking from a script at all. After I finished reading, Lutfur Rahman said that my reading out or my presenting it verbally came across clear, understandable, which he said, implied, suggested, couldn't be said of the written version. But it's the same thing I read. What does it mean? Because I had sent that same text by email the day before to the council employees that do the processing of the documents about any meeting. And the woman that I was in contact with in the so-called democratic services didn't raise any question. She thanked me for the emails because I sent several emails, and nobody else communicated to me saying any difficulty. So Lutfur Rahman didn't understand, even though the text 220 words, but it was a text clearly, plainly written in front of him and contained, included in the package for the papers prepared for that particular edition or sitting of the so-called cabinet meeting. And I have other instances. For example, on the 6th of September 2013, the day before the demonstration, threatened demonstration by the racists in Whitechapel, there was a briefing held in the so-called mayor's office by Lutfur Rahman, who never ever told me about any of these, but told many of the others that are supposed to be reporters, journalists, etc., etc. I was made aware of that by a member of the crew that Lutfur Rahman is supported by accident. That crew member wouldn't have told me that had he thought about the fact that Lutfur Rahman most certainly would not welcome my presence. Why? The answer is that I would ask questions. I would ask questions about justification, substantiation, verification, etc., etc., which none of the others would ever do. And there was a short exchange at that event that involved a member of the George Galloway crew, a white man who was born in Essex but settled in Bethnal Green and was living with the sister of Claire Short, Eileen Short. Now, that man, by his own admissions to me, didn't even know about Tar Hamlets until very recently, when he came not long ago. And he would not have known anything about the history of Tar Hamlets community that I have been defending now for 50 plus years. So there is nobody who has been actively defending the community or reporting it, covering it, interpreting it, analyzing it, representing it anywhere like I have been doing. So for all those criterion grounds, the evidence should have taken priority, and Lutfur Rahman should have deferred to those acts and activities. Instead, Lutfur Rahman abruptly interrupted me while I was dealing with a statement that that individual had just made, which clarification that I was making would have helped the understanding of the statement at the time. Now, I think that Lutfur Rahman interrupted me because of his stupidity, because of his inability to understand literally what was being spoken about. And I think that when Abbas Uddin Elias Halal made the allegation against Lutfur Rahman in Abbas Uddin Elias Halal's dossier sent to the Labour Party National Executive Committee in 2010, words to the effect that Lutfur Rahman had been brainwashed by the IFE at the East London Mosque. I think that that statement made by Abbasuddin alias Hilal contained a lot of substance. Why? Because unlike me, Abbasuddin alias Hilal is more familiar with Lutfur Rahman as a person than I have been, because it was Abbasuddin alias Hilal who recruited Lutfur Rahman into the Labour Party, and it was Abbasuddin alias Hilal who encouraged Lutfur Rahman to stand as a candidate for election as a Labour Party councillor. So Abbasuddin alias Hilal, on those basis, has more knowledge about Lutfur Rahman's intelligence, abilities, limitations, and his source of his brainwashing, his grooming, let's say, to use a topical word. So Lutfur Rahman is cognitively challenged, and for that reason, he is not fit to hold a public office that actually entails making decisions affecting the rights, the well-beings, and the safety and security of hundreds of thousands of people in the borough, which is a part explanation, not all the explanation, of why Tower Hamlets Council, while Lutfur Rahman has been in post as the quote elected mayor post holder, Tower Hamlets Council has blanked Shamima Begum. Now, not only is it Shamima Begum that Tower Hamlets Council has blanked, let's check the other thing that is relevant to the Shamima Begum being blanked by Tower Hamlets Council. There is this is the KHOODEELAAR television channel broadcasting under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo. Baby Angel Geronimo is the world's bestest Baby Angel Geronimo and the witness. Baby Angel Geronimo is the unique, absolutely unique, reliable witness to the depravity and the corruption of the UK state at local levels, at regional levels, at central levels, and beyond. That is why we broadcast under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo, who we love and who we adore and who we absolutely defend and support and speak for and speak with and solidarize with, and have done and will continue to do. Baby Angel Geronimo is the banner under which we broadcast. This is coming to 2 hours of this broadcast video, and the time is 6:49 GMT. We shall continue for a bit longer, and then we bring to an end this particular edition. Now, the Tower Hamlets Council website, and we are looking at Tower Hamlets Council website, looking for reference to Shamima Begum. We have already done Shamima, the actual search, and we shall do the next search, which is the narrow search, safeguarding let's do it a singular, safeguarding children duty. Okay, and this is something that we shall post on the Twitter so that you can see it. Where I'm looking at the page, you cannot be seen by the camera. Now, it says search results, safeguarding children duty. Your search for safeguarding children duty returned 0 results. Remember the 0 results? So, Lutfur Rahman is the executive mayor. So all the decisions made by, in the name of Tower Hamlets Council, are decisions that are made by Lutheraman, either personally or under his, let's say, executive authority. What is happening is that when the community secretary, that was, the ministry now known as the ministry that is fronted by Michael Gove, I think, or whoever is the latest Secretary of State that is the Secretary of State for affairs to do with the conduct of the local councils. When this post was held by Eric Pickles, let's say during the the first term that Lutheraman was imposed, Lutheraman, was made aware of the evidence that the BBC's Panorama program had collected about the misconduct and wrongdoing by Tower Hamlets Council as fronted by Lutheraman. And as Pickles said, as based on the Panorama program's finding, that John Weir, the reporter of the Panorama program, Pickles, ordered an inquiry into the financial side of Tower Hamlets Council, and he appointed Price Waterhouse Cooper, PwC, an accountants company in the UK. Although it's not the best accountancy firm, but it is one of the numerically the big ones, and it has got huge contracts with government, etc. So Eric Pickles received the accountancy firm's report, and he stood on the floor of the UK House of Commons on the 4th of November 2014. And in that speech, Eric Pickles condemned Lutheraman, and he condemned Lutheraman's behavior. Now, one of the things that both John Weir and the Price Waterhouse Cooper report jointly in their separate kind of contracts expressed confirmation about was that Lutheraman, in making significant financial property related decisions, ignored, overlooked the advice given by the non-partisan, let's say, employees of the council, who were in post to give objective, impartial advice to the executive decision maker about things to do with finance and property. Now, let's go to Eric Pickles' speech. And how do we get there? It's a thing that is known as Hansard. The Hansard has got two forms. One is a Hansard for the House of Commons, and one is a Hansard for the House of Peers. This is the House Hansard, that is the one for the House of Commons. And this is the one that is headed, the entry of the Hansard. Hansard is accessed by hansard.parliament.uk. And this is the entry about Tower Hamlets, and we shall wait for the page to load. It's taking its time. So the page is, it's 12:36 p.m. on that day, the 4th of November, one of the first speeches in the actual proceedings of the day. And Pickles started, "With permission, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a statement about the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. The government have long been concerned about the worrying pattern of divisive community politics and alleged mismanagement of public money by the mayoral administration in Tower Hamlets. Following persuasive evidence presented to me making serious allegations in April, I commissioned Price Waterhouse Coopers to undertake a formal best value inspection report of the council. In my written statement this morning, I published the PwC report. It paints a deeply concerning picture of obfuscation, denial, secrecy, the breakdown of democratic scrutiny and accountability, and a culture of cronyism risking the corrupt spending of public funds." Okay, so you've got those words there, corrupt spending of public funds. That is Luther Roman. And the whole thing is accessible online. I don't have to read every part of it. And what happened as a result of that was that a public meeting was held after that speech, which included the announcement that he was sending kind of commissioners. We shall come to the commissioners in another edition, because for anyone viewing this edition is quite a demanding factual kind of edition. Most of these are, but this one is a bit more demanding than normal. So the meeting that took place at the place that used to be called Water Lily in the Mile End Road was attended by, quote, star speakers in support of Luther Roman. And the star speakers, of course, included the crook Ken Lying Still Livingston and the multifariously, embarrassingly exposed as an opportunist, selfish self-seeker George Galloway. These two individuals were photographed sitting on either side of Luther Roman. And one of the comments that Ken Lying Still Livingston made at that rally, which was attended by really brainwashed dummies in the main, people who attended didn't have any clue. Absolutely, the majority of the people attending had no idea about Eric Pickles, had no idea about the Price Waterhouse Coopers, no idea about John Weir, no idea about the commissioners being sent. But these are the people that Shamsul Haq, the Imam of the Ford Square Mosque X, who appeared as a witness, character witness before the Richard Morey investigation into the petition that had been filed by 4 petitioners in Tower Hamlets against Luther Roman's election of May 2014. Shamsul Haq was asked during the appearance in the election court whether he had publicized, whatever form it was, the advice to the people, the Muslim prayer goers, to vote for Lutfur Rahman as part of their duty, the faith duty. And I didn't attend personally. I'm only going by what has been publicly available. So Shamsul Haq denied that he had done that. So the side of the interrogators, side of the petitioners, let's say, then put the fact to Shamsul Haq that evidence, recorded evidence existed of him telling prayer goers to vote for Lutfur Rahman as part of their religious duty, which in the contents of the ruling published by Mori on the 23rd of April 2015 clearly is part of the abuse of spiritual kind of location, spiritual abuse. So when Shamsul Haq was told that he had indeed advised prayer goers to vote for Lutfur Rahman because it was a duty under the faith, Islamic faith, Shamsul Haq answered by saying words to the effect that if there is evidence, recorded evidence, then I did so, then I must have done. Now that man was the leader of prayers, religious leader for many, many years in the Ford Square Mosque. And he was confessing, admitting in the election court that he had lied. So it's not like Lutfur Rahman was the liar and the crook on his own. Lutfur Rahman was being aided, supported, abetted by other liars who were wearing the disguises to the community for years as faith leaders like Shamsul Haq. There was another similar witness who appeared before Richard Mori during the same kind of session of the hearing. Her name is Baroness Phala Manzila Uddin. Phala Manzila Uddin was asked. Words to the effect were spoken to her, asking her if it wasn't her that had actually been found to have stolen public money by submitting false claims about her actual home address. And Phala Manzila Uddin was forced to admit. And she did admit by discrediting herself all over again and reinforcing the evidence against Lutfur Rahman being dishonest. So when Abbasuddin alias Halal said that Lutfur Rahman had been brainwashed at the East London Mosque, he had not only his own personal knowledge about Lutfur Rahman, but he had additionally available evidence floating, circulating in the East End of London, other than among the people that Abbasuddin alias Halal knew as being closely linked to Lutfur Rahman. Against all of this background, the Shamima Begum child safeguarding children duty being blanked by Tar Hamlets Council's website falls into place, doesn't it? It's a lying council. It's a denying council, and it's a lying, denying council, lying and denying its duty owed to these children. They didn't protect these children. And Shamima Begum has been left exposed to being brainwashed, radicalized, raped serially, and entered into a series of other wrong events and incidents. So when I condemn the judiciary, we don't condemn the judiciary out of blankness. We condemn the judiciary based on all these facts and other supporting facts, that these children deserve to be protected. And there is no mention. There is absolutely no mention of this safeguarding duty being denied or being absent or being withdrawn or being neglected in any of the comments that Sarah Benity made or any of the comments that Sue Reed makes. So why are they excusing Tar Hamlets Council over this? We shall be going into the essay length details of Sue Reed and her complicity with the corrupt Tar Hamlets Council's behavior and other racists in the editions that follow. This one is going to be concluded at 2 hours 18 minutes at 0709 hours GMT on Thursday, the 23rd of February 2023.